your stations are tuned into.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacalyn. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacalyn.com to book an appointment today.
Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, live here on Business Talk Radio and social media. Our show today is a story of hope, inspiration, and overcoming adversity. I am your host and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I am a certified life and career coach, and with me today is Al Cini. He is the managing partner of BCAT, and he is also my partner and friend. Welcome to the program, Al.
Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. I co-host your business program on Wednesdays.
Yes.
And I was really honored and thrilled, frankly, that you invited me to co-host today's program, because even though it's not my usual topic, it is such an important topic. And I don't know how you met Mildred. Tell us a little bit about our guest. What a wonderful guest you found for us.
Oh my gosh, I am just so overwhelmed with everything that she's accomplished and everything she's been through. She is an incredible speaker. She has a story that will probably be well known to many people, but having not heard it from herself, I think it's going to be a very powerful interview. So we are going to bring her out in a few minutes, but I wanted to just share for someone who is so well known, she is so humble and down to earth. And I'm just really thrilled that she's here with us today on the program.
And she has so much to share. I mean, she was part of a major international news story. And her part in that is really underreported, frankly. And I think it's just such a privilege and such an honor to go behind the scenes of all that headline activity. To find out how it affected her and her family, and how she, frankly, learned how to make lemonade out of all these lemons that life dealt her. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
I want to bring up a screenshot of her books, because Mildred D. Muhammad, in addition to everything that she's gone through personally, what her family went through, she has taken the time to write 7 books, which is incredible. And I'm sure she's planning her next book. But it's just... It's amazing how people have the resilience to come back from the things that she's been through, and how she's helping people every single day of her life. So I'm just, again, honored that she is here with us today.
Well, we're probably teasing the audience a little bit with what role Mildred played in this major event.
Yes.
We're really talking about the DC Sniper, which was big news in 2002, I think, in October, over several weeks. And Mildred is the sniper's wife, and she had to deal with abuse from her husband, plus media coverage, wall-to-wall media coverage over a long period of time that she needed to cope with and try to stay ahead of, and all this while she was raising children. So that, if you talk about resilience, I think Mildred Muhammad personifies all that.
Yes. When you talk about stories of hope and inspiration, overcoming adversity, this is it. So in addition to what we read and heard about in the media, we don't know what she was going through personally, those feelings of everywhere you go, people are looking at you, people are talking about you, people are wondering about you. And to have to live through something like that, is really amazing. So she is the ex-wife of the DC Sniper, and he, of course, was executed. So, you have to wonder what that was like. And I think there was a gap of 7 years in between when he was arrested and when he was executed. But we'll find out from her what those 7 years were like. And what I'm most interested in is to find out how she's doing today and how she's changing people's lives as a result of what she's been through. So I want to take a minute to look at a clip about part of her journey, and then we'll bring her on.
Great.
In 2000, 2002, after nearly a month of shooting that left 10 people dead in Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C., authorities caught sniper John Allen Muhammad and his accomplice Lee Boyd Malveaux. Officers told Muhammad's ex-wife Mildred something chilling.
That I was the intended target. He was killing innocent people to cover up my murder so that he could come in and get custody of the children.
Mildred and John were married 12 years with 3 children. Years before the shootings, Mildred asked for a divorce. She says that's when he began abusing her through stalking and intimidation.
He began coming in the middle of the night, standing over my bed. He told me that you have become my enemy, and as my enemy, I will kill you.
Mildred survived, however, and Tuesday she shared her story at Fox Valley Technical College. She's here as part of the Wisconsin Serving Victims of Crime Conference. It's for law enforcement and victim services workers.
Is a great learning tool for those who work in the field. Hearing from the victims that come forward and say, this worked, this didn't. Here's how we can work together better.
Mildred says more accurate statistics on domestic violence are needed, as is a greater understanding of the severity of psychological abuse like what she went through.
You see someone without physical scars, you think that they're really not in trouble, but they are in so much trouble that they can't tell you for fear that it will come back on them.
Mildred says she knows this because she lived it. And now it's her goal to help other victims survive it.
No one deserves to be treated like they're worth nothing.
In Grand Chute, Alex Rinaldo, Fox 11 News.
Wow, I get chills watching that.
It's quite a story.
It's amazing. Let's bring Mildred D. Muhammad on the program from Maryland. She's
Hello.
Joining us. Hi, Mildred. Thanks
you
for being
having
here
me.
today.
Nice to be here.
Nice to see you, Mildred.
Nice
Thank
to
you.
see you too.
So, Mildred, when we were backstage before the show began and I told you we were going to be playing that clip, you said you hadn't seen that before. And I'm wondering, we're anxious to hear your story, but what feelings come up for you when you watch that today?
Well, the feelings come about I am able to help others who may find themselves in that type of situation. I have healed and I can help others to heal as well.
Beautiful, beautiful.
That's a great mission, Mildred.
Thank you.
So, Mildred, if you would share with us your story as you recall it. You've told your story many times, but to our viewers, our listeners, it might be the first time that they're hearing it, and I know they love to hear it directly from you.
Okay. Well, my story begins, of course, with John Muhammad. He was, we have 3 children, a son and 2 daughters. He went to Desert Storm. When he came back, he wasn't the same. He was diagnosed with PTSD and he was not debriefed. I don't want to give the impression or for anyone to assume that because you have PTSD that you would create a criminal or do a criminal crime, to other people. Many people with PTSD suffer so long and some are still suffering, but family members know that when soldiers return from a war zone, they are not the same. And so as we were moving along, he had 3 children again. We had our own business. Inside the business, he was seeing multiple people. I asked him for a divorce. He did not want that. After that is when everything started. He moved out and began to stalk me. When it was time for our children, we had to have a parenting plan in place, which we did not. We had orchestrated visitation on our own. Every other weekend, he would pick them up. Well, that second weekend he picked them up, he didn't bring them back. And they were gone for 18 months. The people around me were spying on me and going back and telling him what I was doing. So I had to cut all communication off with people around me. I passed out. I was not eating anymore. I was eating a half a slice of bread and crushed ice. I lost 3 units of blood. They put me in a hospital. He found out I was in the hospital through these other people. They had to put me in a room with a guard outside the door. Anyone that came up to try to see me had to present their ID because they didn't know what John looked like, but I did. In the middle of the night, a social worker came in, said I needed to do three things. I needed to change my name, change it to a name that when people called me that I would answer. So my safe name is Millie. I had to disconnect from everybody that I knew, and they had to bring me clothing, which they did. And that night in the hospital, I had to sneak out the back door of the hospital where a car was waiting. They asked me to slide down into the seat so no one would see that I was in the car. However, I was looking at every rooftop and every open window because I knew that John was going to kill me. His motto was one shot, one kill to the head, never leave an enemy behind. He told me that you have become my enemy, and as my enemy, I will kill you. And I took that literally. So I ended up in a shelter for 7 months. In the shelter, I was able to get my divorce October the 6th, 2000. I was able to get a writ of habeas corpus, which meant anywhere they found my children, they needed to pick them up and bring them back to me. Washington State had just passed a law stating that if you are a victim of domestic violence, you can leave the state without being charged with kidnapping, and you do not have to let your abuser know where you are going. My sister called me from Maryland and said that our mother was sick and could I come to help her. Although I did not have my children, I didn't know where they were, I came to Maryland to help my mom and my sister. While here, I contacted the FBI, told them that my children were no longer in the country. They sent an agent over. I gave him my divorce decree, writ of habeas corpus, and he said, well, how do you know your children are no longer in the country? I say, well, my cousin is a private investigator, and he says that when the trail runs cold, that means that the people you're looking for are no longer in the country. He took my paperwork. They sent it back to me 2 weeks later and said, we're sorry, we can't help you. We're going to direct you back to the FBI agency in Seattle since this is an ongoing case. I contacted that agent. They said, well, Ms. Muhammad, since we know he's looking for you, we want to put you in the middle of a parking lot and use you as a decoy. I said, excuse me, you're not going to know which way the bullet is coming from. They said, well, we're just trying to help you out. So I hung up the phone. August the 30th, I get a call from the shelter that I was in, and they said that they may have found my children and to call the police department in Bellingham, Washington. They gave me the number to Detective McCarthy. I called him. He said, Ms. Muhammad, we found your children, but you need to come back to Tacoma, Washington for an emergency custody hearing. I flew back to Tacoma, Washington, went to the custody hearing, and John was there without an attorney, and I had the YWCA provided me an advocate and an attorney. And he said, Your Honor, she already knew what those children were. He said, since her paperwork was done pro se, which meant I did it myself, she would get full custody of the children. John said, Your Honor, you tell me I want to be able to see my children again? He said, you have to go through the same process that she went through, case dismissed. We waited for him to leave the courtroom. We went out into the hallway. My attorney was calling CPS to find out where my children were. I felt a presence behind me. John was charging at me. I ran down the hall. My shoes went everywhere. My attorney looked at me. An advocate looked at me. They looked at John and they ran too. We all ran around the corner. John put his hand on the courtroom door, looked at me and said, gotcha. My attorney said, oh, hell no. We leaving out of here tonight. So we go downstairs. We go to Department of Health and Human Resources, that's where my children were, picked them up, waited until that night where a car was waiting outside the back door of the YMCA, got in the car, drove 45 minutes to CPAC Airport, got on a security, picked us up from the car, took us to the plane. We landed here at BWI in 2001, September 6, 2001.
September.
Fast forward to the shooting. They told us to look for 2 Caucasians in a white box truck. So I was looking for that, and I was looking for John. Everybody was looking for 2 people. I was looking for 3. ATF and the FBI knocked on my door October 23rd, and they asked me when was the last time I had seen John Allen Muhammad. I said, why are you asking me about John? They said, we just want to know when was the last time you seen him. I said, September 5th, 2001 for an emergency custody hearing. They asked me to come down to the police station to answer some questions, which I did. And they asked me again, when was the last time I seen them? And I told them. They said, well, have you heard about any shootings in Nevada? I said, no, sir. So the agent was walking in and out of the room. He stopped and he said, look, Miss Muhammad, we just gonna have to tell you. We're gonna name your ex-husband as the sniper. I said, what? John? My head hit the table. They said, yes. They said, well, do you think he would do something like that? I looked around in the room. I said, yeah. They said, well, why would you think that? I said, well, we were watching a movie. And he said, I could take a small city, terrorize it. They would think it would be a group of people and it would only be me. I asked him, why would he do something like that? And he just changed the subject. They said, well, Miss Muhammad, didn't you know you were the target? I said, well, no, why would I think that? He said, well, he shot a man right down the street from you 6 times, took a laptop and $3,000. There was another man he shot a couple of miles from you in the abdomen. Miss Muhammad, you were the target. I said, would you like to go into protective custody? I said, you got to ask me that? They say, well, yeah, because some people don't want to go. I said, well, have you caught him yet? They say, no, ma'am. I say, do you know where he is? They say, no, ma'am. I say, and you still have to ask me. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I want to go into protective custody. So we went and picked up my children, my sister and brother-in-law. They took us to a hotel, and the very next day is when they caught him.
Wow. You know, Mildred, it's a harrowing story, and it's a depressingly common story, because I know that since that time you have made you've made it your life's work to reach out to other victims of domestic abuse.
Yes, sir, I have.
Help them. And one of the things that impresses me about your books, frankly, is that they're not it's not high literature. These are practical manuals of how do you get through this. Correct. And written by somebody who made the plan that you need to make in order to find your way through. I mean, there are so many other questions that come up too about what happened afterward when this hits the headlines, because that's a whole other level of trauma you have to deal with. And I definitely want to hear more about that. But in your books, I want to make sure that we tell people, if you're a victim of domestic violence, Mildred can help you get through that. Before the program, you mentioned that it typically takes about 7 tries to get away.
It takes 7. It's documented that it takes 7 times of a victim leaving before she actually leaves for good. Really,
before and you really you want to, if that's where you're headed, you want to get there right away, because you may not live through the 5th and 6th time to make it to the 7th time.
Right.
And that was almost your story.
Oftentimes, victims stay that long because they don't have anywhere to go. We're in a pandemic now. Where are they going to go? The shelters are full. Everybody is supposed to stay at home orders are in place. So that means that the abuser is running rampant. He or she doesn't have to make excuses for being controlling, don't have to make excuses for checking your phone, don't have to do any of that anymore. This is an abuser's gift. And that's why the numbers for domestic violence in a pandemic, I have said that domestic violence was an epidemic that evolved into a pandemic within a pandemic. So that's where we are. It is a pandemic within a pandemic. And you don't hear it on the media anymore. You don't hear about it unless the story is just so out of character, so that it needs to be reported. But think about all of those women and men who are not able to report, who are afraid to, who don't have anyone to call or to help them out. And that's why I say to those, just like you know the victim, you know who the abuser is. Call them. Don't text, don't email, call them so that they will know someone, that abuser will know someone is checking on them, and they will be held accountable for what they did.
Well, Dr. Jacalyn, I know you're scrolling the number of the...
Yes, I wanted to give the number for the people listening on the radio. So Mildred's quote is, you don't have to have physical scars to be a victim or survivor of domestic violence. The 24-hour national hotline for domestic violence is 1-800-799-7233. I just want to say we have a couple of Facebook user comments. Unbelievable interview. Thank you. And also heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking too. And we haven't really, how old were your children while you were going through all this, Mildred?
They were 6, 7, and 9.
So
So
you're going through it, and they're going through it all at the
And
same
they're
time.
going to, yes, sir.
Wow, wow, that is
And when
that's.
he took them out of the country. He took them
Mhm.
to Antigua for 18 months. I did not know where my children were. The
Hmm.
people around me knew where they were and didn't tell me.
Wow.
that's one of the questions that I had was, how did you know who to trust? Even the government agencies, like, how did you know when all this was going on around you?
But see, when you are a victim of domestic violence, you have to assess the situation quickly.
Hmm.
So it's called a touch test. So I will say, Al, John is really treating me badly and he's talking like he wants to hurt me. And you say, well, John wouldn't do anything like that. I'm not talking to you anymore. We're done. Because
Hmm.
you're going to go back and tell John what I said, and that's going to put my life in danger.
That's just going to make it worse for you.
Just like with the police officer,
Hmm.
I went to the police station to report that John had took the children, and he told me that they put the children in the missing children network, which was a lie because I didn't have physical custody. No custody order was in place. And
Hmm.
when you are getting ready to go to court, which I call the window of opportunity, if
Yeah.
there's no custody in place, that means, and they told me, well, he has just as much a right to the children as you do. He can take them anywhere he wants to take them. He doesn't need your permission because there's no custody order in place. So he
Wow.
took them out of the country, and they didn't do anything to help me to get them back.
Mildred, it sounds like you spent a lot of time being isolated, whether that was physically, emotionally, and I'm wondering how you were able to deal with that and to move forward.
Well, isolation had become my friend,
Hmm.
and and I began journaling. Journaling helped me to process my emotions faster than talking to anybody, because when I began talking to other people, they turned it around and made it my fault. Well, if you wouldn't have did this and you should have done this and he could have did this. Well, I'm not responsible for another adult's behavior. I'm only responsible for mine. And that's all I'm going to accept. So journaling helped me to peel back those onion layers to get to the root of my pain so that I can process and keep it moving.
Boy, there's valuable advice right there. And, Mildred, your story, I mean, I normally co-host the business program, and business people all the time make the mistake of delegating something that they need to do and that they should be doing to somebody else, and then hoping they'll do it for them, but they never do. So if there's anything I'm learning, Mildred, it's that you can't trust anybody else to live your life for you. You've got to do it yourself.
You have to do it yourself. And I tell victims this all the time. It's good to have advocates, but you got to take it and do everything you need to do. And as far as business people, there are no statistics on individuals making $250,000 and above. If you watch the news on individuals making that type of money, you hear domestic dispute. You don't hear domestic violence. They don't call it that.
Wow.
Why? Because we don't want the masses to understand that this is a epidemic, that is a pandemic. It happens from the very rich to the very poor. It doesn't matter if you have your educational status, your financial status, your race, your creed, your gender. It doesn't matter. This is the fabric of our family, and every time there's a domestic violence issue, they sweep it under the rug like it's dirty laundry. We don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. And 80% of victims do not have physical scars to prove that they are victims. 20%. So if I don't have scars and I'm looking like I'm looking and you thinking, oh, she's fine. I am not fine. I just learned how to temper my emotions long enough to make it through the day and sit in the car before I go inside, knowing I'm going to be terrorized when I get inside.
Yeah.
I have to prepare myself emotionally because I don't know who I'm going to get that day as an abuser.
In the clip we showed that just before you came on, you had in capital letters in one of your books, "It is not your fault."
It is not, because
how many times were you told it was your fault, and how hard was it to not believe that?
Oh, that's called victim blaming to the highest degree. I was told that if I would have stayed with John, that he just would have killed me. If I was on the If I would have stayed on the West Coast, then the people on the East Coast would still be alive. How dare I call me and my children victims when none of us were hurt or killed? And how dare I bring this drama into this quiet community? The whole thing was my fault. It was always my fault. Even now, it's my fault. Even now, I'm blamed for his crime that he decided to do. He wasn't on drugs. He didn't have anything hindering his knowledge. He took his military career and brought it into the civilian sector. What was his military career? He's a combat engineer. His job was to go into enemy territory to look for roads that lead out as an escape, blow up bridges and roads, and leave quietly. Is that not what he did? He brought his military career into a civilian sector, and his purpose was to kill me. The theory was he was killing innocent people to cover up my murder so that he could come in as the grieving father, get custody of the children, and the $100,000 they were given to the victims of the DC sniper. Because what was the profile? 2 Caucasians in a white box truck. Clearly, he does not fit that description. And he would have drove away, probably would have got Father of the Year, and I would have been dead along with other victims of the sniper. That was the theory.
Mildred, are you saying that today, all these years later, that people are still looking at you and saying that it's your fault?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh.
Still always
your fault. My fault. It is still, I should have known how he was feeling. I should have invested more time in him. They don't understand that in 2002, 2001, I went into the shelter in 2000. 2 years I was on the run for my life.
Wow.
I don't know what he was doing. I didn't know what he was involved in. I didn't know anything about his circumstance or what he was doing. All I'm trying to do is, number one, stay alive, and number two, find my children. That's it.
Wow. Dr. Jacalyn, I know you have to take a break for sponsors a bit. I'm dying to ask the question of Mildred. How did the media help or not help when the story broke? I mean, you're now all of a sudden you've got all this noise surrounding your story, and you're trying to get your story through all that. I want to hear that. And we also got a great Facebook comment from somebody who wanted to know, besides journaling, how else did you cope? And I think we should explore that too.
Okay.
Absolutely. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Stay with us here with Mildred D. Muhammad on Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn and Mr. Cini.
Hey everybody, my name is Ralph Graves Jr. I'm the host of the Ralph Graves Jr. Show, and I want to invite you to pick up my book, Unstoppable. I wrote a book called Unstoppable. It's 7 universal laws that will transform how you pursue and achieve success. The one thing that my 20 years of law enforcement has taught me is that no matter who you are, we are all governed by universal laws, like gravity. But in this book, we're going to talk about laws like the law of forgiveness, laws like the law of control, the law of intelligent practice, the law of expectancy. I was able to see how those, no matter what their background was, those who identified and treated these laws with respect, they were able to go on and lead successful lives. So pick up this book, and you can go ahead and pick it up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, RalphGravesJr.com, where anywhere where fine books are sold. Thank you.
There are 7.7 billion people on Earth today. 40% of these people are under the age of 25. Young adults are the most fertile mission field in the world today. In Scripture, we see Jesus pouring his life into 12 young adults who he equipped to change the world and all of history. Like Jesus, we believe that the best approach to reach the world with the gospel is to invest in young, emerging leaders and equip them to build disciple-making movements. Concentric is the notion of surrounding and sharing a common center. Our center is the model and strategy of Jesus for both leadership development and ministry formation. As a global alliance, we provide equipping in biblical leadership based on Jesus' example in the New Testament. Jesus modeled for us how to make disciples that reproduce. Focusing on leadership development is key to creating movements that spread the gospel and Jesus' disciple-making strategy to young leaders around the globe. Our Ministry Alliance partners are actively equipping leaders and building movements of multiplication that reproduce the life of Christ. Join us today to equip young leaders with Jesus' strategy that will change cities and nations.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAP partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAP partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
Academy Sedan and Limo is a full-service transportation company serving the Philadelphia metropolitan area with full knowledge of the New York City, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. areas. We pride ourselves on being the most dependable, conscientious company in the industry. Our always on-time service and dependable pricing make us the company to call for any event or occasion. Our vehicles can accommodate any size party for any occasion. Our vehicles range from four-door sedans to SUVs to minivans to limo buses to full-size tour buses and can accommodate groups of 2 to 100. We offer airport shuttle service or over-the-road service without limitation regarding mileage or time, and no drive is too long or too far. So if you find yourself in need of transportation of any type with any vehicle, give us a call at 610-842-4564 and let us show you what a real transportation company can do for you.
Use code ACADEMY2020 to receive 20% off your first 3 rides, including parking and tolls.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Hello and welcome back to this special edition of Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, Stories of Hope, Inspiration, and Overcoming Adversity. With me today is my co-host Cini and also our special guest Mildred D. Muhammad. Mildred is an award-winning keynote speaker and author. She's authored 7 books so far, and she's also an expert speaker for the U.S. Department of State, which we didn't even get to that yet. So you're also the founder of After the Trauma, and you spend a considerable amount of time helping victims of domestic violence. Yes, Mildred, it's such an honor to have you here. I also wanted to share some comments that we have from people here. Journalize and crystallize your thoughts. Wonderful recommendation. Thank you so much for that. Besides journaling, how else did she cope? So why don't we start off with that?
Okay. Well, I danced a lot because I love to dance. I fasted because fasting helps to bring more clarity into your thoughts. As a matter of fact, I'm on a 10-day fast now, and today is day 7. I fast at the end of every year, 10 days. I also sang. I did whatever I needed to do to heal, because everyone has their own pathway to healing. You have to find what's best for you. I exercised, I power walked. I did whatever it took for me to get well. So but I did not. I went to the library and got a book on counseling for me and my children, because at the time this was a high profile case, and unfortunately I must have come across every unethical counselor in the area, because all they wanted to do was to be famous. And so me and my children, I went to the library, got a book on counseling, and I counseled them and myself so that we could be emotionally balanced people moving forward from this event.
Yeah, Mildred, that is such an important point. I just want to explore that a little bit, because before the break, we talked about the media.
Right.
I'm going to put up a comment one of the comments we got on from a Facebook user, you were the ex-wife of the DC sniper. You had already experienced domestic abuse. You were on your way out of that relationship when all this happened. Now, you mentioned everybody's got a story to tell, and everybody's got their own angle on this. And you mentioned you met every unethical counselor you could possibly meet who wanted to use your name as a springboard to generate business. So here we have the media. What the media wants to do more than anything is get eyeballs on the television, sell newspapers. So your story actually gets buried in all that, doesn't it?
Correct. Yes, sir, it does. And they always say I am the wife of, because a wife have more credibility than an ex-wife, right? So I was his ex-wife since October 6th, 2000. This happened in 2002, and they know I'm his ex-wife, but they continue to report that I am his wife. So I have to continuously remind people that I am his ex-wife, and also to point to the fact that 75% of victims who try to leave an abusive relationship are hurt or killed. 75%. We were divorced for 2 years, and he still came after me.
Wow. I mean, in some people's minds, it never goes away. So
it never goes away.
Yeah, and that means this can go on for
ever.
This decades for some people.
Even if they get into another relationship, unfortunately, the abuser will convince their present partner that their ex-partner is still the issue, and will get them involved in terrorizing and stalking the ex.
And none of this ended up in the newspapers. What they wanted to talk about was you're the wife of the DC sniper, and that's the only part of the story they ever really wanted to cover.
That's the only part they ever told. They never told about I was a victim of domestic violence. It wasn't even in court. My issue of domestic violence was not settled. When I gave my testimony, the jury wasn't even in the room. They didn't even get to hear my story. So my issues and my children's issues have not been brought up, have not been solved in court.
Wow.
So, and the foreman said the reason why they gave him the death penalty is because they didn't want him to finish what he started, which was to kill Mildred Muhammad. They didn't tell you that part.
They didn't say that part at all, which
is it was buried in the newspaper.
Yeah, this is a reality that you're living with every day, and it's a story that nobody else is telling.
Nobody, exactly. Nobody, and even the police, they would not say that the reason for him coming here was to kill me. They even buried that. Wow. So it's just he came here, random killing people to put $10 million on a stolen credit card so that he could embellish or whatever I can't remember the word, embezzle the government.
Embezzle the government. Yeah.
That's what it was. And it was not that at all.
Wow.
Mildred, in addition to the feelings of being terrorized and the isolation and I'm sure shame, where does anger come in? Because I frankly, just listening to your story, I feel angry at the fact that the media has just pushed this under the carpet and your story hasn't come to light. How do you feel?
Great question.
I feel that they needed to do what they needed to do to sell paper. They needed to sensationalize this story to the point where they would get people to know about it, to sell papers, to be number one in the ratings and all of that. And I just let them do what they had to do because I needed to raise my 3 children. They were my focus. And I had to make sure that they understood what was happening. So to try to help children 6, 7, and 9 to understand that their father was going to kill their mother and then help them with the execution. That's a whole, there are no books for that. There are no how-to books with that. I had to come up with my own way of helping my children to understand that process and to help them to understand that in spite of what other people think and believe, and even what their dad did, he is still their dad. They can still love him. and they can still pray for the best outcome for him that they can.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's a parenting lesson. I mean, the truth is there's power in, it's a kind of a form of forgiveness, but you really can't move on until you reach that point. And, you know, you're getting credit for being able to do that. Is a really, really tough job, I'm sure.
I just want to give out the phone number. I neglected to give it out in the beginning of the show, but if you want to call in and ask questions of Mildred, the number is 631-730-5468. Mildred, how protective of you are your children today?
My son is 30 and my daughters are 28 and 27. So they pretty much know what I do. Actually, before I even began speaking, I asked their permission to tell our story. And they told me, as long as you tell the truth, Mom, go help as many people as you can. So I have their blessing to share our story.
Great. And, you know, in talking about your children, they were school age at the time that the news story hit. So they're going to school and they're encountering other kids, and the other kids are telling them what they're reading in the newspapers.
No, the other children wanted to fight them. The other children wanted to hurt them. And they had their set of friends that I found out years later that protected them. So they had their entourage, so to speak, helping them go to school every day and coming home. It wasn't until they were in high school or a little bit after that their friends came over. We were all sitting down talking, and that's when I hear about them protecting them.
What they went through, really. A lot of that they didn't bring back to you. I mean,
No, they didn't, because they knew if they did, then I was going to handle it.
Well, yeah, I would guess. It's that protective mother thing, and
exactly.
I can relate to that.
So, Mildred, for people who are watching, people who are listening in, and nobody knows who they are, but they're in a situation where they're being abused, what would you say to them? You mentioned it's a pandemic within a pandemic. It's domestic violence is a subject that's not brought up as much as it should be. So if somebody's out there right now and they need help, but they're afraid or they feel ashamed or they feel guilty, what would you suggest that they do?
Number one, guilt, shame, or transferable emotions that come from the abuser to the victim. So none of those emotions you're feeling in terms of it is your fault are not yours. Do not take on the emotions of the abuser. 2, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 800-799-7233. They will be able to give you resources in your area that will help you. Create a plan. If you are able to work outside of the home, because everybody's not teleworking anymore, but if you are able, take a set of clothes with you every time you leave the house. I know abusers are watching this show too, and they're probably going to be paying more attention to what their victim is doing. But be as discreet as possible. Only tell one person what you're planning to do. Any more than that will get back to the abuser, and you will lose your element of surprise. Everybody has that one friend that will help them through anything. Call that friend, that one, and only tell that friend, male or female, only tell that friend. Because you know you're a victim. And this is what I want to say to the bystanders. Bystanders are people that know these are victims, that know the family member, that know the abuser, that is even someone that's living next door to you, because now bystanders are your next door neighbors. If you hear someone that's being abused, call the police. I know it's scary calling the police these days because of the police brutality and all of the issues that we're having, but unfortunately, they have the training, right? I would never ask anyone to put themselves in harm's way trying to help their friend or their family member. When you do talk to the victim, ask them one question. But before you ask this question, make sure you have your boundaries in check. Understand what you will do, what you won't do, and what you can't do. Once you understand what that is, ask the victim, how can I help you? And stop there. don't make suggestions. You don't know what they're going to say. Don't assume you know what the victim needs, because you don't. That's the mistake we often make. Well, why don't you leave? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? We always ask the victim, why do you stay? But we never ask the abuser, why do you abuse?
Yeah.
We never hold the abuser accountable for the victim. When you ask the victim, why do you stay? You're taking the total responsibility you're putting the total responsibility of the abuse and the relationship on the victim, as if leaving will stop the abuse. It won't. It will escalate it. Then there's stalking. Then there's so many other issues. So if you know someone that is a victim of domestic violence, ask them, how can I help you? And then go from there. You already have your boundaries in check. You know what you can do, won't do, and will do. And wait for them to tell you what they need. Victims know what they need, but we don't ask them the question.
Wow. That is, I know you're available as a speaker. And I wanted to point out too, on your website, it's possible for organizations to book you as a speaker to tell your story. I'm wondering, have you ever told your story to a law enforcement group?
Actually, I train police officers.
Are you finding that the current generation of police officers is becoming more receptive to this and better at it?
Well, now there are domestic violence units in police departments, which there weren't very many at the time that I was a victim. So they are much more receptive. They have a lethality report that they do now. They separate the victims from the abuser so that the victim is able to freely speak about what's happening in the relationship instead of holding them together and the victim is afraid to. So there are many new methods that are put in place by police officers all across the country. And it is a much better way than what it was when I was a victim. However, some people still fall between the cracks.
Well, a lot of it is because of you and the work you're doing. You're making people aware of this means we all get better at dealing with it when we hear about it. And that's why I think it's such a great interview.
And if you know someone that's a victim of domestic violence, because it's a pandemic, everybody knows somebody now. I mean, all of the abusers are being exposed. That's where we are, because you got to stay at home and then you find out, oh, I didn't know that was going on over there, because I, as a victim, didn't want you to know, because I knew you would take his side or her side. Because John was very charismatic. Everybody took his side. Well, why would you say something bad about him like that? He's not that type of guy. I didn't say anything. Again, touch test.
Wow. Yeah, we have a Facebook comment up that I'm not going to put up because it's got a person's name on it.
Okay.
But his comment is, my big brother, sister-in-law, please take a listen. So there are people listening to this interview who are either experiencing what you're talking about or know people who are experiencing. It's such a common issue.
I would ask him to continue to contact the victim. Just stay in contact with her, and hopefully the environment that is created for her, she will be able to speak on it to them, because she may be afraid to reach out. Family members know. As I said, they know, but they look very few family members will go over to the house and get the victim out. Very few. Not very often you hear that. And when you do, it's like, wow, that's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. But some people they know about the abuse and they just let it keep going. And then children are victimized and they feel like they don't have a voice. And, it's sometimes, and that many times, the mother stays because of the children. I don't have anywhere to go, especially if he's the one bringing in the money. Where's she going?
Yeah, well,
she don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah, I was wondering
about sleep under a bridge with their children. Nobody. So I'll endure the abuse.
I wondered what role that played if you don't have the financial wherewithal to be able to leave. Where do you go? And I guess, as you mentioned, you were in a shelter for other reasons, but people can go to a shelter.
Nope.
No,
shelters are full. Transitional housing are full. We're at stay at home. This is we're in a whole different world with this pandemic. I mean, policies and procedures had to be upgraded, had to be changed, had to be created all over the world, not just in the United States, all over the world. Before the pandemic, they had a list of countries where the most dangerous place for a woman to be was in her home. The United States was on that list of 10 countries.
Wow. We touched on this a little bit before the program, but we did mention that men can also be victims of.
Men can be victims because the statistic has changed. It used to be 95% women are abused by men and 5% men are abused by women. Now it's 15% of men are abused by women and 85% of women are abused by men. I believe both of those numbers are higher because for a man who's raised as a provider, as a maintainer, right? I'm not going to tell you that I'm a victim of domestic violence because even some of them have said that police officers made fun of them. How you going to let that little girl take you out like that? I mean, where's your manhood? I mean, that a man's ego is very fragile. You got to be careful how you talk, the words that you use to talk to him. So if I'm a victim of domestic violence, I'm not letting you know that. I'm just going to endure it. I'm letting her hit me, whatever it's going to be, until it gets so bad that I have to speak out. And so for men, there's a white ribbon. So you have a purple ribbon. But men wearing white ribbons let victims know that I am a supporter and I am here to help you. There's an organization for men against domestic violence, that have white ribbons.
That's interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. And it is an underreported instance.
It is.
People just don't talk about this. Women don't talk about it enough. Men don't talk about it at all. So
when they speak up, I mean, everybody listens, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, that's what they say.
And so the organizations for men are starting to be more relevant, are starting to speak out that, hey, these are programs that we have to help men who are victims of domestic violence. Because again, I have a son and I have to look at all of the victims, regardless of gender.
Right. Wow.
Mildred, would you share with us your role as an expert speaker for the U.S. Department of State? That sounds so interesting. What is your role there?
Well, I am, when there are organizations or programs that want me to speak, then they send me out, as well as the Office on Victims of Crime. I am a certified consultant with them as well.
Great. That's good. And you're available to speak for any.
I am available to speak.
Planning an event.
Yes, sir. You can go to my website, mildredmuhammad.com, and go to the contact page, and we can start the dialogue of my becoming your keynote speaker for your event. I've spoken at military bases because the military is taking an interest in helping their soldiers. I've even gone over to Korea, which was great for me to speak to soldiers in the Army about domestic violence. And I've gone to Hawaii, where soldiers, after the program, reached out to me and said, Ms. Muhammad, we need help. I mean, I married this girl. She only married me because I was in the military. Now what do I do? And I've helped them to get out of that situation. Soldiers are primary because they're isolated and there's not many people that they can talk to. And so again, if someone comes up to you and says that they are a victim of domestic violence, believe them and don't go back to the abuser and ask, are they abusing you? Don't do that. And you know the courage it took for me to come out of my comfort zone, to come to you to say I'm a victim and I need help. For me to do that, you demonstrated a level of safety for me to come to you and ask for help. I could have been thinking about this for months.
Right.
And I get the courage, and then you say, oh, he wouldn't do that. She's not that kind of person. Oh, wow. I just blew my cover. I just blew it. Now I'm going home, scared to death, don't know what's going to happen. And now what? Wow. He or she's going to come home. You talk to that person. I did that. I went to friends for help. John came home and said, so you went and told them what's happening, huh? you know what? I'm going to fix it to where no one will ever believe anything you say.
Wow.
And that's exactly what happened. When I went to them and asked them to help me find my children, they said, oh, John told us you was going to do that. Snap out of it. Get back to work. At least they're with their father.
Wow.
Why are you saying such things about him? He's a good man. Okay. All right.
Everybody just wants it all to go away. And the problem is it's not going to go away, and you have to live with it, and they don't, which makes it easy for them, but really tough for you. And you're going to be singing this song for the rest of your life. I hope you know that. And
that's okay, because whatever I need to do, I will do that. Even when organizations hire me to speak, and they say, well, Ms. Muhammad, do you feel comfortable with us saying you're the ex-wife of the DC sniper? I said, I don't have no problem with that, because that's the truth. But if you want to get people in those seats, you better use that, because they will come, and they come. So I know who I am. I know who I am. Everybody, almost everybody have an ex. Mine, one friend said, girl, your ex just cut the cake, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so whatever it is, that's what it is. I'm okay with it. I know who I am. My children know who they are. He's my ex. That's it.
Wow.
Such a powerful story. How often, when you're speaking afterwards, you mentioned some of the military speaking that you've done, but how often do people come up to you and say, Mildred, I'm being abused and I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. Does that happen?
Every single time. I had a commander of one of the Army bases summon me to his office, and the advocate said, Mr. Muhammad, he never does that. I don't even know what this is about. So I get into his office, and he said, Ms. Muhammad, I had second thoughts about bringing you here to speak. I said, I know you did, because you thought I was going to bash the military because he was in the military. I said, I'm not about that. I'm trying to help as many people as I can. He said, well, my daughter is a victim of domestic violence, and I need your help in what I need to do. And I asked him a few questions, and his son-in-law was a police officer. I said, oh, you got two men in authority here. So he said, I went down there, and he was scared. I said, I'm sure he was. He thought you was going to come and kick his butt for getting his daughter. I said, if your daughter wanted to leave, she would have left. She would be here with you right now. She called you to fix it. So you have to go down there and fix it. I said, when you go down there, take him out for a beer or for pizza or whatever, just the two of you talking. And then ask him this, because you drop the titles. You're not a commander, he's your son-in-law. So this is father to son. That's the role you take, because found out that his mother and father passed a few years ago. So you're his father figure. So look at it from that perspective. Right. And when you get his guards down, don't say, can I ask you a question? Because as soon as someone asks you that, your guards go up. We know that. Right. So just ask the question, how can I help you? I say, he may look at you a little strange, because nobody asks a victim, how can I help you? They don't even ask the abuser that. They just, they're trying to figure out, what angle are you coming at me? Why are you asking that? And he said, as soon as he asked them the question, all of his emotions came out. He was afraid he wouldn't be able to provide for his daughter. He was having issues because he had nobody to talk to. His father had passed. There's no one in the police department that he could emotionally deposit his emotion with, that he trusted. Right. And that's the thing for men. They need to feel safe when depositing their emotions with anybody. And once he did that, he said, Ms. Muhammad, you was right. My daughter's happy. He's no longer abusing her. They have a wonderful relationship. I said, he just needed somebody to talk to. And some people don't know how to voice that. So instead, they use violence in order to bring their issue to the forefront.
Right. That's great advice there. I mean, that kind of intervention isn't really all that aggressive. It's just, I know what's going on. I want to help you.
Right.
And I mean, sometimes I think when somebody's the abuser in a relationship like that, they just imagine that somehow nobody's seeing it. And
they know. Oh, okay.
So they're not getting away with it for the most part. But in John's case, I'm sure that was true. But, wow. Well, okay. One more thing, and then this is I know we're running over
Go
time.
on for hours.
Well, let's keep it running for a little bit. You mentioned before the program that you're Muslim. We talked about that, and the women of all faiths are equally vulnerable to this. So,
yes, there's no religion for domestic violence
at all. But
all.
is a mosque or a church necessarily a good place to go for help? Is that a good place to start?
The first place every victim goes to is family, and then their religious organization.
Okay.
Most times, everybody sends them back.
Really?
They take the side of the abuser. You know, they quote the scripture about the woman is supposed to be submissive to the husband, right? But the husband is supposed to be submissive to the wife too, right?
Yeah.
But that's the scripture that they use, and they send them back. Yeah. Now, some churches and religious organizations are becoming more involved with giving better information to the victim, even counseling both separately and then together. So whereas there was no understanding about domestic violence, there is more understanding, and they continue to learn more to help their parishioners with understanding that they are there for them as a religious organization and that they can come to them for help.
Wow. Well, so every church, every mosque, every organization ought to have room on a bookshelf for your 7 books.
Well, that would be nice.
Well, I think they should. I think that
would be nice.
Well, I think
Let's
they should.
bring up the book covers again. And
but what I do know is that when they have, when they know me, right, they'll call me and say, "Look, I got this victim. Can you help them?" Of course, I'll help them. You know,
sure.
I'll get that. I get emails from friends that know victims and say, "Look, this person needs your help." Told them to read your book. There was even one that when I had my organization after the trauma, and the reason why I don't have it anymore is because people thought that donating to after the trauma was actually helping John. So I was running that on my own with my own finances, and so eventually I had to let it go. But in that, I received a phone call from a woman that was working at a government agency, and she said, "Look, I've gone to everybody, and everybody tells me to call you. So here's the thing: her daughter was a victim of domestic violence, had a son. The person was diplomatic. He had diplomatic immunity. They tried serving him a restraining order. He took that restraining order and urinated on it in front of the police. So that tells you what nothing's going to happen to him.
Right.
So they moved her to Philadelphia. And I said, okay, so this is what we have to do. Number one, is there any place that your daughter can go? She said, Georgia. I said, okay, so I'm going to contact the Georgia Coalition to see what we can do. And these are the steps you need to take. The first thing is you need to get 2 track phones from Walmart, right? Because you can't trace those numbers. Don't tell anybody you got these phones. You have one and you give one to your daughter. Number 2, we have to move fast since they don't have a restraining order. There's no parenting plan where she can't leave the state, right? And we have to be quiet on how we're going to do this. I said, so you get that done and I'll call the Georgia Coalition, which I did. And they gave me the name of a different organization to help her. And so we had her a place to go. We had her legal representation. We had food. We had clothing. And I said, so how are you going to know that I sent her? He said, well, just tell her to say Mildred Muhammad said. I said, because I don't know her name and I don't want to know her name, right? This is for her protection. So the mother called me back. And we were able to send her from Philadelphia to Georgia, and she was safe. Wow. So a couple of years later, my daughters and I are in Panera Bread eating, and this lady walked up to me and she said, "What's your name?" I said, "What's your name?" And she told me her name, which I didn't know it anyway.
Right.
And so she began telling me the story about how her mom called me for help, and she was in Philadelphia, went to Georgia. I said, "Oh, okay, I remember you." And she said, "I just came over here to thank you for saving my life. I am married now. My son is wonderful. My husband is great, and we moved back to this area. And I just had to tell you, thank you." And that was the first time my daughters were able to hear about the work that I do.
Story.
She said, "You know, your mom is amazing. Do y'all know that?" They looked at her and said, "Yeah, we know," but they didn't know that part. So
That's a beautiful
she was
story.
able to move on, and now she's happy and she's healthy, and so that's the work. Because I have a liaison with other organizations throughout the country to where if someone needs help and we need to move them, then we can do that. But that was pre-pandemic.
Right. Right.
Whole different ball game.
All different now. But,
Right.
while you were talking, I was thinking, so the Underground Railroad is still in operation.
It is still in operation. It really is.
And it
really is.
needs to be. And I think
It
that's
really is. And a lot of people don't know that there's an Underground Railroad for victims of domestic violence. So once you pass them off to somebody else, they don't know what happens. And that's exactly what happened with us.
no.
And I was even given an award in California. My organization was for being the Underground Railroad for victims of domestic violence.
Wow.
Amazing. We've talked a lot about domestic violence from heterosexual couples. I'm wondering about same-sex couples. Or is there any data about how often domestic violence happens in those types of relationships?
They happen a lot. There was even a one episode where the two women, the victim was admitted into a domestic violence shelter, and the abuser pretended to be a victim and got in the same shelter to continue abusing the victim. And so once they figured that out, then they had to come up with a different type of policy in order to know who's who.
Wow.
So like I said, domestic violence is in every community. It doesn't matter your race, your gender, your religious affiliation, the amount of money that you make, your job, or even the type of relationship that you're in. It still happens from the very rich to the very poor. Doesn't matter. Even people who are homeless are victims of domestic violence. Doesn't matter. It's all about power and control.
Are there any telltale signs, like, for example, if you are dating, you're looking to meet someone, you're looking to get into a relationship, are there telltale signs of someone who has these types of traits or these patterns of behavior?
Well, they may come off as being attentive and loving. I'm calling to check on you. I don't want you, I don't like that outfit that you have on. Make sure that you call me when you get home. That all of that sounds good, because all relationships start with green flags. Sure. Every last one of them. Nobody knows who's going to be the victim except the abuser. He and she already knows. They've already found you out. Did they research on where to come at you and asking questions? My mother always said that when you get into a new relationship, never tell your present partner what happened in their relationship, because what they would do is gain your information and know how far to push you before they really come out to be who they are. So we all meet the representative, because that's what happens, right? We meet the rep. And then after 60, 90 days or so, that's when the mask comes off of the person. When you're in a relationship and it starts to be abusive, don't be ashamed to tell other people. That would be my most important tip. Because when you meet somebody and they're new and they're fresh and the relationship is fresh, you're saying all the good things that happen, and oh my God, he's a godsend, she's the woman of my dreams, all of that, and then the abuse starts, and then you don't go back and tell those people because you feel ashamed, which is not yours, and you feel that they're not going to trust me, because everyone thinks mostly that victims of domestic violence are not good decision makers. I mean, I made the decision to stay alive. I made the decision to make sure that me and my children are safe. Maybe not to your standards, but to at least what I see is a danger in my situation. Give me credit for that. So as you're in this relationship, even if it's one person, just continue to say, this person is not right. Because sometimes you need another ear to bounce stuff off of so that you can know, that's really not right. I do need to leave this relationship. And if it's a narcissist, and a covert narcissist means they are able to hide who they really are, you gotta leave quietly. Just up and leave. Don't, I don't like the way this relationship is going, because every time you say that, they're able to talk you back into the relationship. They're able to use those words that they know will penetrate your heart, that will get you to say, oh, I don't love anybody like I love you. You're the person in my dream. I really wanted this to work out. Maybe one day I'll marry you. All the words every person in a relationship wants to hear. Don't. You feel in your gut this is not right. Listen to your gut. Listen to your intuition. Listen to your instinct. It is there as a warning. So if you have to leave quietly, where you leave and don't come back, as soon as you decide you're not coming back, block everything, social media, phone number, everything, block them, because that's the only way you're going to get away. And if they continue to harass you, go get a restraining order.
That is really great advice and great direction. I know personally there have been times in my life when I was dating someone or seeing someone and I saw red flags and I thought, oh, I can overlook that, or they're going to change, or I have the power to make them change. And then you realize it just escalates, and no, you don't have the power to change anyone else. And when you see the red flag, look at it and run.
Recognize it.
The first red flag, because Maya Angelou said, when someone is showing you who they are, believe them the first time. The first sign you see, you may say, okay. My thing is 3 flags. After that 3rd flag, you gotta go.
You
get out.
That's
you
it.
gotta go.
Yeah,
that's because it's not gonna get any better. 3 flags. Strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, you out.
You're out. Good for you.
Now, what about people watching or listening who are the abuser? They have been abusing and they're listening, they're thinking, wow, I think that's me and I want to get some help. So what steps can they take to change their behavior?
All abusers know that they are abusers. They don't have to think about it. They know. They know they're abusers. So if they want help, then they should go to therapy to figure out what is the root cause. What gives me, why am I entitled to feel that I can actually control someone else's life? Why am I like that? What is it that I experienced in childhood or adolescence or teenager that I feel I can do that? Why am I entitled? Why do I feel entitled? So you have to go to therapy to find out the root cause of why you feel that way. And therapy is the best way to do that. Some people don't want to go to therapy. Then journal. Journal out why are you feeling this way, to get a better understanding of your own emotions and come to terms with that. And then then you'll figure, you know what, I really do need to get some help. I don't want to terrorize my feelings. And so every abuser makes a conscious decision to abuse. They are not psychologically ill. They don't have mental illness. So don't put them in that category. They know exactly what they're doing, and they know how they are administering the abuse to that victim. They know. There are men and women who were raised in an abusive family. They did it. Some choose to continue abusing their partners. Others choose not to. They don't want to put the person that they're involved with in that type of relationship. It is a choice.
Yeah,
it is a choice.
Wow. What, if any, correlation is there between what we've seen in the television movies about children abusing animals, and then it grows from there? Is there any relationship to domestic violence of people starting out maybe with abusing animals?
Yes, ma'am. There are many cases with that. They like again, it starts in childhood and it goes unchecked, or they know what they need. Again, how can I help you? Let that person tell you the kind of help that they need. All of us know what's wrong with us. Every one of us have flaws. We know what we need to get better. We know what we need in order to come up out of the situation that we're in. We don't ask the question, how can I help you? Well, I just need, when I got my children back, my son hated me, hate, hated. Anything I told him, he would fly off the handle. So I had to find a way to get to him emotionally. And I was sitting on the sofa and he came up to me and he said, Mom, you want to know what Dad said? I said, "Oh, yeah, okay." He said, Dad said, you didn't want me. Dad said, you love the girls more than me. Dad said, he took us because you told him to, because you wanted to live the rest of your life without us. I said, anything else your dad said? He said, yeah, but I don't want to hurt you. I said, I'm a big girl. I can take it. He said, no, Mom. I said, okay, I'm going to tell you like this. I said, I looked for you everywhere. I showed you the 1-800 number. I showed you the website I set up. I showed you all the numbers I called trying to find you. I said, I looked for all of you, but I knew your dad would work on you more than he would your sisters because he was jealous of our relationship as mother and son. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to compare what your dad said to what I do. If you find that what I'm doing is what your dad told you I would do, I want you to talk to me. Because you need to understand why I do those things. And then you can determine after that conversation if it's a lie or if it's the truth. And even if it is the truth, you will know why I do those things. So, can we do that? He said, yes. I said, okay, now let me ask you this question. I said, what can I do to make your life better? He said, Mom, I just want you to spend time with me. And so from that, each one of them had their own day with me. 3 children, so pick a day of the week. No days can coincide. Pick a day. And that was their day. So we went to the park. We would go. I taught him how to do the T in football. He played football. We played baseball. We played basketball. But that was his day. And that is how I was able to emotionally get my children back. So we have to ask the question. And I tell other people, I told a colleague that, and she said she went home, her son is 7. And she said they were cooking together and he was putting butter on the bread. And she just out of the blue said, honey, what can I do to make your life better? He put the knife down and looked at her and said, Mom, when I'm angry, can you just hug me and tell me that you love me? I said, can I hug him? So we never ask these questions because we assume we know. And from that point on, every quarter, I would ask my children, even now, I ask them, what can I do to make your life better? And now they say, well, Mom, I'm good. I said, okay. I'm just checking. But my daughter said, Mom, can you help me to model? Because I was a model back in the day. Can you help me to model? So I helped her to model. My other daughter, Mom, can you just show me how to write in cursive? You never know what your children are going to say. You never know what your significant other is going to say. This is how you keep in touch with each other emotionally to make sure you understand their love language, because that's all that is. It's their love language. So ask, what can I do to make your life better? And let them tell you how you can help them to make their life better.
Wow.
I love the openness and the transparency in that question instead of trying to be a fixer and making suggestions. Well, you should try this. You should do this. We have no idea what's going to happen.
We have every year in October, we set aside one day to where, okay, they tell me how I've hurt them. and I have to accept that and apologize, and then we go through the steps of atonement. So I'm always open to hear what I have done and not make excuses for it, because we make mistakes. So not make excuses for it and say, I apologize. I will strive not to do that again. And if I do, then call me on it. And that's what we do now. Because they're adults now, they don't need me so much no more. So, I'm an advisor.
Good for you.
Mildred, what's next for you?
Well, I have my own, I am a certified professional and personal development coach. My company, My Focus LLC, I help other individuals with learning to live their best life now and understanding their emotions in professional life as well as personal, professional, because, domestic violence is at the job. People trying to take credit for your work, trying to make sure that they are seen more than you. You have the abuser is the boss and the employee is the victim. And so it happens. So how do I handle that in a professional setting? How do I get control of my emotions to where I'm not out of control, but other people can see who the real abuser is, right? And also how to go through those barriers of where you may not be getting the recognition and still be able to accept that and continue to do your job. And personal, we all wear these many hats, mothers, fathers, sisters, children. How do I switch hats emotionally and still feel that I'm giving everybody equal access to me?
Yeah.
Wow. One thing I'm wondering is, you said you're fasting now, right?
Right.
How do you
Day
have so
7.
much energy? You have so much energy. So
well, fasting helps to regenerate your cells. It helps also with any illnesses that you have. It resets your body. I'll put it that way. It resets your body. So 10 days, the last 10 days of the year, I'm purging emotions, people, because sometimes you have to purge people, and situations that have not been good for me, that have held me down emotionally, made me feel where I was not happy with myself, or other people trying to spew their venom upon me for things that they did, but trying to hold me responsible for their behavior. No, not doing that. How about not doing that? Not accepting other people's behavior, knowing that they're doing this consciously. See, that's what you have to remember. People do things consciously to see how far they can push you. But once you learn to set a boundary and say no, then that throws them up. Oh, you're not going to do this with me? No. But why? See, as an adult, I don't have to explain myself to you. I don't need validation from anybody else, and neither should you. Once you start being a people pleaser and trying to get other people to validate who you are as a person, you in trouble. Because I don't need validation. Because God, when I was born, He blew His breath into me. That was my validation.
That was your validation.
Yeah, that was my validation.
I saw your Instagram post about fasting. I think that was really interesting. If people want to follow you on social media, what are your handles? Because that's right through.
Or it's Mildred D. Muhammad, because there are a lot of Mildred Muhammad. So sometimes it's Mildred Muhammad, sometimes it's Mildred D. Muhammad. But my picture, the picture that you showed initially, is my profile picture. So they'll see me. Some people want to, I have my public figure page on Facebook. I have a page on Instagram, and I have a page on LinkedIn. Those other things, the Hulu and all them other places, I do have a podcast. I'm trying to keep up with folks. I have a podcast called Rising Above It All on Anchor, and I put out episodes just about every week. So this week I'm talking about Kwanzaa because this is the celebration that we're in. But I've also spoken about domestic violence. I lost a family member during COVID. So I go through the 5 stages of grief when you're in that kind of situation, because we're losing so many people. We can't go to the funeral, which I could not, because she's in Louisiana and I'm in Maryland. So they had a virtual funeral, and that's where we are. So knowing to come into an understanding that there are stages of grief that we go through, it will help you to process that better.
So many incredible takeaways from this interview.
Great interview. What a great conversation. Absolutely.
Amazing.
Thank you, Mildred.
Thank
Mildred,
you.
if somebody wants to work with you on a one-on-one basis, or somebody wants to hire you as a speaker, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it your website?
My website, because on mildredmuhammad.com, there's a page for my coaching, and there's a contact me to solicit for a speaker.
Great.
Perfect. And if people want to purchase,
if you just want to go to my life coaching website, it's myfocusllc.com. myfocusllc.com, and there's a 30-minute free consultation to find out if you want to work with me and how do we proceed forward. Wow. And I'm authentic. I give it to you like it is. There are no shortcuts, because we got to. Your pain is this onion, and we got to go through each layer to get to the root, so we can dig it up, and you can be emotionally balanced in every aspect of your life, because that's what it is about, being emotionally balanced through everything and knowing how to handle situations and understand your emotions during that situation.
Great.
And for people who are interested in purchasing your books, they can purchase them through your website.
Yes, ma'am. And they will get an autographed copy along.
Beautiful. Right. Of your 7 books, just quickly before we close out the program, which was your favorite to write?
I'm Still Standing.
I'm Still Standing.
Mm-hmm. That was after the execution, the things that me and my children had to go through, because writing Scared Silent, I had to go through that whole process. Although I journaled and some of the information came out of my journal, it was just going back through that, which was healing. It reminded me of some things that I had gone through, but I'm Still Standing, for me, helped for my children to see, look what we came through, look how we came through, because I took them to his funeral. A lot of people don't know that. So they came to me and they say, Mom, can we go to the funeral? I said, okay. So I took them. They needed closure. They had not spoken to him. They had not seen him since he was arrested. Yeah. And so once we went to the funeral, I saw that they had that closure that they needed. And when we came home, they were better. But I told them, you cannot use your dad as an excuse for failure. You cannot come and tell me, because my dad is the DC sniper, I cannot do A, B, C, and D. That will not be accepted. You gotta have one better than that. And they never came to me with that, because they know I wasn't going to accept it. And so what are we going to do? My daughter sings classical music in 8 different languages.
Oh my gosh. An incredible, incredible story. We have this comment. What a great interview. Thank you, AJ publicist and Miss Mildred Muhammad. And she is terrific. I worked with her. So thank you so much. It's time to close out our program. And I really appreciate all of the time and the incredible story that you shared about your life and how you're helping other people. I'd like to close out the show again by giving the telephone number that if someone is being abused and they want to reach out, they need help. There's a 24-hour national hotline for domestic violence, and that number is 1-800-799-7233. Mildred, any last thoughts?
To the bystanders, and that also includes employers, if you know someone that is a victim of domestic violence, please don't send them back to the abuser. Call that 1-800 number for domestic violence hotline, and believe the victim. Believe the victim. That's the one thing that we always find an issue with. Nobody will believe me because they love the abuser so much, regardless of the authority that they may have, the position that they may hold in the community. If a victim comes to you saying they need help, help them, please. And if you can't help them, give them the 1-800 number so someone else can help them.
Good advice.
Mildred, you are a beautiful person inside and out. You are a true heroine, and just I have so much respect for you. And thank you for being on our program. I hope you'll come back because
I would love to come back.
Thank you.
So if you would wait for us backstage, we'll be right there.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Whoop. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Thank your audience for listening, and I hope that the information that I have given will help just not them, but other people that they know.
Absolutely.
God bless you for that. Thank you.
Thank you again. Mr. Cini, an incredible, powerful interview by a person who is just, I have so much respect for her, as I said, and the work she's doing is incredible.
And solid, actionable advice, not just feel-good stuff. So
Right.
What I really like about Mildred is she's a terrific resource for practical, tactical steps you can take to deal with a situation that might actually be life-threatening. And such a pleasure to interview her.
And something else is think about all the things that we go through in our lives and things that get us down or things that get us upset or we get stuck. She's been through practically everything, right? And and look at what she's been through and look at what she's accomplished. Look at where she is. It's just,
and you could still make it work. It can work no matter what.
Exactly. So you can never give up hope. That's why I love doing this show, because it's always about someone who has been through something really tough that we can't even imagine. We'd never want to trade places. And yet they come out on the other side, spending their life helping other people. It's just,
Mildred is a great example of exactly that, Doc. Yes.
Any final words from you, Mr. Cini?
No, I just wish everybody a happy new year, except it's not a wish, it's an action item. Happy New Year is up to you. It's something you have to make happen for yourself. That's why stories like Mildred's are so valuable, especially maybe this time of year.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being on the program, and I'll look forward to seeing you later today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you. And to our loyal viewers and listeners, thank you so much for being here. This was an incredibly powerful interview. And I hope if you are out there and you are struggling, that you will reach out to Mildred, or you call the hotline, you reach out to me, reach out to Mr. Cini, but don't be alone. I also wanted to announce that we have a special event this afternoon. It's the 2021 Wealth of Health event. We have 17 people who are presenting. Each will have 15 minutes to present something on how our audience can set an intention or focus for 2021. We're running that today. That's part one. I'll be sitting here at this desk for 6 hours. I'm so excited. And then on January 1st, we're running the second part. Part two, we'll have 15 presenters. So I hope you'll join us for that. And I hope you have a beautiful day and that you stay safe and realize that you're not alone. Whatever you're going through, there is someone who can help you. There is an answer, but don't live in silence. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time, hopefully today at 2 p.m.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.